Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop, Emerald Planet. All the ecology news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's your host, Executive Director of the Emerald Planet, Dr. Sam Lee Hancock.
Welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States, looking around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for the 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the services, and the products that are making a difference as we move towards 2050. So in looking at towards 2050 and having 2 billion new people on the planet, there's going to be a tremendous amount of technology, services, and products that are going to be created to be able to equate or even exceed the quality of life that we have today. And so how do we actually protect the intellectual property, the trademarks, the patents, all of the other intellectual property that goes in to, in many ways, creating a whole new economy based on the green technologies? And we have a gentleman sitting right beside me who is part of that whole movement. It's Jeffrey Mason, Esquire. He's an attorney who is the co-founder, CEO of what's called Fast Patent Partner LLC. Jeff, welcome.
Thank you.
Glad to have you back. Jeff has been with us before and did such a fantastic job. We said we have to come back and explore more law projects and topics. Tell us about Fast Patent Partner. What does it mean and what's the importance of it?
Yeah, well, Fast Patent Partner today is intended to try to serve all patent lawyers every day with our technology. We've launched a website, fastpatentptodocs.com, which we hope people will use every day. And our goal ultimately is to have every attorney use our technologies every day. Well,
looking at the number of attorneys, we know that overseas there are actually many countries, the majority of the attorneys are patent attorneys or intellectual property attorneys. And in the United States, we're more on the litigation side. So why would you be establishing something that, you have fewer numbers of attorneys? And what's the ratio that you know of between the patent intellectual property and maybe litigation?
Well, in this country it's more 50-50. But as you say, in Japan, for example, I think in many other countries, there's quite a few more people that are actually prosecuting patents, which is very difficult work. You actually have to understand thoroughly the technology that you're dealing with. That's not something that just anybody can do. So it's very important work, and then it ultimately means you're preserving the intellectual property of the company.
Well, I know that your background, you are an attorney, and that's earned degree, but also you have a scientific background as well. Tell us about that, and why did you transition from the scientific community into the legal community back in the days before the fast patent didn't even exist?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've always enjoyed science as well as also the, speaking, frankly, as I'm doing right now. And I didn't really want to do just science in a lab someplace. So I was trained as a biochemist ultimately, but decided it was much more interesting to work with people that have actually gone and made great inventions and tell people the world about them.
Well, one thing that we started talking about early on before we really started this series on what we're kind of euphemistically calling green law is the whole thing about what you're doing seems to be very important as far as creating the new economy around green technologies and services and products. So how can your firm and then also intellectual property attorneys really help to foster a new green economy?
Well, I mean, it's incredibly important to raise capital for any company, ours as well as any green technology company. And I actually we're going through a round of capital right now where the standard form, there's a very special box that says, what are your IP advantages of everybody else? And it's a one-pager, but they want to hear about that. So if you have a lot of money to raise, which many green technologies do have to do, you do want to have that box full of very good things to say.
But how are you actually fostering this whole industry as far as, again, a very broad brush, of course, but that green technology, because it seems like there's a special environment that needs to be created to enhance and also to encourage more people to look at what they're doing, green their practices, green the process, but really to create what we're, again, calling green jobs.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think one of the great companies that I've looked at in the green technology is a company called Recycle Bank, and they have a very different business model, and there's been a lot of controversy about whether or not you can patent a business model, but ultimately right now there's quite a few ways to still do that. So if you really have a fundamentally different way of going about your business, you can patent that, and so you can reap the value of that.
Well, and as we know, there's much of the actual value really is in the intellectual property that many of these companies have. Is worth as much or more, maybe even than the product or the processes. So how do you know how to value intellectual property?
That's quite difficult, but in fact, I think what you try to do is you talk to experts. You also talk to other people in the field. Get them interested and excited about it. It depends a lot on what your investors are interested in terms of. I mean, we're a very early stage company, so quite frankly, at this stage, it's still a lot about the potential. At a more sophisticated stage, they're probably going to want a full opinion.
Now, looking at data mining, this is something you hear a lot about. And of course, now the term is big data. What is big data, and how do you go about this data mining process?
Yeah, well, big data is more or less data that legacy databases can't handle. So you would have a SQL database or something like that that is just chock full of data, and you'd like it to talk to another SQL database, but there's no way to do that. So big data gets into amounts of data and making it accessible in ways that it just hasn't been before, where you learn all kinds of new things from it, and that's what the data mining comes in.
Well, looking at this terminology, I know that people keep talking about cloud computing and all that, and of course, since the beginning of emails almost, we've been doing somewhat cloud computing. So how are you differentiating? Is there any differentiation between cloud computing, data mining, and big data?
Well, big data, what's nice about it is very decentralized, and that's what cloud computing is also excellent about, is many, many machines, so massively parallel machines, each doing a little piece of the problem, and so cloud computing is very well designed for that, so they do go together very well, and they're very powerful trends.
Well, it sounds like you're really on the leading edge of what's going on, so as you're going out, you're talking to attorneys and various law firms. I know that there's a number of clients that you already have, so you're talking about being a startup, but actually seem to be doing very well in going out and dealing.
Thank you.
So what are they're looking for, and how do you tell them this is something that's really important for you? Yes, you're doing great work. We know that you have access to a lot of information, but you really need our service.
Well, a lot of it has to do with a lot of the databases that we mine, specifically our government databases that are extremely expensive. So you have to be very selective about how you go about it and very careful. And there are billions of pages of documents that are relevant to every patent case. And so we specialize in really getting in, spending the money that needs to be spent sometimes, but also processing it using cloud computing to actually dig out the most important information that's in there. But it's a very difficult process.
So what you're doing then, you're really electronically, you're sending people in there really to do the spade work, turn over, everything in there about this particular topic or particular patent.
Sometimes you have to use
pending.
people, that's true. I mean, you do have to use people for some of these aspects of it, and that actually is the reason why I think we have a good edge, because in fact, as an attorney, we know what to tell people to do. We have to figure these things out because it can't be all automated, but we do try to automate as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the whole thing about it, there's so much information out there, and it's just, millions of bits of information coming in almost day to day. And so it's just amazing that you're able to go out and, again, go into this whole aspect of what they call big data and really extract what's really important for your clients. So really the finesse in what you're doing is in the extraction process, not just finding it, correct?
Or even thinking of what to mine for. I mean, that's sort of the big...
So it's the logic of the information and what's there.
Even the inspiration in the first place. I mean, so for example, we have some products where, I think if we hadn't patented those products, we would have imitators. I'm not saying the technology is so beyond everybody at this point. Particularly with cloud computing, it's very democratic. I mean, anybody can tap into EC2. So no, I think that there's a lot of innovation that's going on that's very exciting, and we're happy to be part of it.
Well, this Fast Patent partner, I really like this name, and it has a lot of energy to it. But also, you and yourself, you're a high technology company as well as being a law, service company. So when people are talking to you about how you differentiate from the high tech to the law, is it something you just naturally weave this together? Or do you kind of differentiate, yes, we have the high technology, but we're doing the law at the same time?
It depends on the project. Sometimes someone will actually come to me with a question. I'll say, our technology really doesn't help you. You really just need a good attorney for that kind of project. And other times, it is more of an amalgamation of those two things, where on the one hand, you do need some high technology, but you really need an attorney very hands-on with it. And then other times, you just need the technology itself. So it really does vary on the question. Now,
looking at what you're doing, I know you're using a lot of technology. So how do you yourself differentiate of when we really, hey, maybe we ought to go out, because I know you bring a number of people come in and actually assist you in what you're doing. How do you determine when you're going to go out and bring in these attorneys, or do you just continually to expand and empower the software in order to do a lot of that work?
Well, a lot of the most obvious times we did is when we actually have to deal with analog work. I mean, frankly, there's a lot of records that we have that are analog still, and so we actually have to bring in the usual teams and do it the old-fashioned way. Quite frankly, that's the easiest way to know about it, but we have to blend that seamlessly with the digital, whatever's available digitally, and try to maximize, you know, technology in that realm. But yeah, the old-fashioned way does come into it.
Since you are leading edge and you're somewhat at maybe a little beyond the horizon, what do you see for the future as far as data mining, big data, you know, putting all this together and being able to mesh, weave this so that you're bringing more and more value, not just to companies in North America, but companies around the globe, and particularly in the developing countries, the BRICS, like the Brazils, the Indias, Chinas, Russias, South Africas, the others. How do you really leverage what you're doing in order to get out and again, going back to this democratic ideal so that all nations have full access?
Yeah, I think that ultimately what we're going to be able to do is solve the legal crowdsourcing problem, which right now is not a solved problem. Everybody sort of wants to solve it, which is basically how do you find an attorney easier than ever before. And the problem with that is it often means a lot of work on the part of the people that are part of that network, which lawyers don't want to do, understandably. So our technologies help that by making those public records sort of form a core basis in which you would actually evaluate attorneys. And that's really where, yeah, in 2050 it should be much easier to find an attorney than it is today.
Well, looking at, you know, we're almost out of time, but looking, say, at a Japan or a China or a South Africa, how do you determine where you're going to send them to for attorneys within those countries to start interfacing with in order to provide your service?
Well, ultimately, I think we haven't studied that problem exactly, but if I was just to speculate a little bit, we would probably use very much the same kind of public records we use in this country. I mean, the public records that we're drawing on for patent attorneys are the records of getting the patents. And so we're simply going to leverage up the information about who's doing that work, and I'm sure we could do that in Japan as well as other countries.
Okay, well, we only have about 30 or so seconds left, but what do you see, Jeff, as far as what's next for Fast Patent Partner?
Well, I think what's next is we're going to be able to start rolling out an enterprise solution where large companies will be able to find attorneys better than ever before, and then we'll make a consumer version of that available as soon as possible so that it's easier to find patent attorneys.
So what would you like to share? We have a domestic international audience, so what would you like to tell the folks that are watching this program right now?
Well, I'm sure that they would love to find attorneys easier than ever before, and I think that, you know, they're not going to have to wait to 2050. I think it's actually going to come out a lot sooner than that.
What's your URL?
FastPTOdocs.com is the main site right now.
You want to do one more?
And FastPatentPartner.com is our main site.
Okay.
So there we go.
Fantastic. Jeff, glad to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
This is Jeffrey Mason, Esquire, attorney. He's the co-founder, CEO, Fast Patent Partner, Washington, D.C. And we'd like to thank you for being with us as we look around the globe to find the services as well as the technologies and the products that are making a difference as we move towards 2050, Great Emerald Planet.
There's more than just books at the library.
There's more than just books at the library.
Excuse me.
There's more than just books at the library.
Il n'y a plus que de livres à la bibliothèque.
Hello. You have a lot of great books here today. You know there's more than just books at the library.
I know.
There's more than just books at the library.
I don't want to be hooked to a machine.
I want all the medical treatment available to me.
I wouldn't want my family to have to make this decision.
My doctor knows what's best for me.
An advance directive is your life on your terms. Talk with your family. Decide what's right for you. Then put it in writing.
Documenting my wishes today means my family won't have to make heart-wrenching decisions later.
To learn more, visit www.putitinwriting.org.
1,200 American youth run away from their homes every day. The National Runaway Switchboard is here to help. 1-800-RUNAWAY. If you are a runaway, thinking about running away from home, or a parent or guardian concerned about issues facing your child, call us 24 hours a day. 1-800-RUNAWAY. In times of crisis, hope is just a phone call away. 1-800.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States, looking around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the services, and the products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And of course, we have to look at the people that are making a difference at the same time. So how do we meld the people and the technologies, the services, and the products to bring about an ever-increasing quality of life as we accommodate 2 billion new souls on this planet by the middle of the 21st century? We have a gentleman who is actually dealing with that, thinking about it on a regular basis. Mark D. Sweet, who is an attorney. He's a partner in Finnegan LLP in Washington, D.C. And Mark, welcome back to the Emerald Planet.
Thanks for having me again, Sam.
Really glad to have you here. And I tell you, this is really interesting that we started this series on what we're calling broad brush green law. And all of a sudden, this past week, there were 3 conferences on, the notion of green law. So we certainly are ahead of the curve on all this. But tell us a little bit about Finnegan LLP, and why is D.C. a logical place to have a firm such as yours focused on intellectual property?
Yeah, sure. Our firm, Finnegan, is the largest IP-only firm in the United States. We have 375 attorneys. And all we do is IP, patents, trademarks, copyrights, from getting a patent to enforcing a patent to doing transactional work, licensing the patent to other people. And why is DC great? DC is great. The patent office is right around the corner in Alexandria, Virginia. We have the Federal Circuit, which makes many of the laws that we deal with in patent law. And then we also have the International Trade Commission, the ITC, which also has patent-related proceedings.
So you're really almost the center of the universe, if you will, as far as North America is concerned. In many cases, even for the world, because the number of patents that are filed here, and then all the various government bodies that all center around this whole thing, the notion of intellectual property.
Well, we certainly think so, yes.
Well, that's really a great thing. So what's the history of Finnegan itself? How long has it been around, and how long did it take you to grow to the size?
Sure. We've been around, we're going on 49 years this year, started by Marcus Finnegan and Doug Henderson, and it grew from a 2-man shop to the size we are now with 5 offices domestically as well as international offices. And it really was a slow growth. Meeting the demands of our clients, our customers.
Well, looking at the international offices, why don't you share what countries and cities you have abroad, because that's of interest. This is an international program. And then we're going to start diving down into this whole thing about intellectual property and where we're going and where do you see this whole movement across the globe, because many countries are getting involved in this.
Oh, definitely. And we have clients all around the world. So we have an office in Brussels, and we handle all our European clients there. We have an office in Tokyo, we have an office in Shanghai, and we have an office in Taipei.
Well, I tell you, I'm sure there's going to be other, as they call them, brick nations that you'll be involved with, as far as India, Brazil, Russia, and some others. But looking at the United States and the first-to-file concept, and I think what you shared with me is the first inventor-to-file system, which is a very long name. But that really brings the United States in line with where most of the countries around the globe have been for quite a while.
Yes, that's correct. Not quite 100% in line, but pretty darn close. And we used to be, or we still are, depending on when your application was filed, a first to invent. So we have old rules and we have new rules. But the new rules just went into effect about a month ago, and that means first to file. And it has a huge impact on our clients around the world, because it just emphasizes the need to get your intellectual property protected as soon as possible. Get your applications on file. The disclosure of what your invention is on file as soon as possible.
Well, having worked in Asia for 40 years now, It's really important that you do that, and the first to file in some ways really makes it easier than this first to invent and all the legalities of this first to invent versus this first to file. So what is the impact on particularly United States companies that are now in the new rules versus the old rules, and what do they need to think about in relation to a firm such as Finnegan?
Well, there are many, many things to think about. With the first to file, again, you want to make certain that you protect your intellectual property. We're talking about green technologies today, and one of the main things that we're doing is a lot of joint ventures, a lot of licensing technology, a lot of partnering. Before you enter into these negotiations to partner with companies, you need to make certain that you've locked down your own IP so that it doesn't get lost or it doesn't get disclosed, and then you lose the ability to seek protection on it.
Yeah, this is one of the things that we learned. We were working in Japan, Korea, well, more China, many other countries, is that people would file in the United States as an example, and then they thought they were protected all over the globe. And I'm sure as an attorney, well, maybe a few gray hairs came out of that attitude. How do you convince them they need to really look at this as a global economy and be sure you do your filings up front and then not at a mad dash trying to back in to do this?
It's very easy to convince them if they've made a mistake previously, because they realize
it costs them a lot of money.
It can be very costly. We coach them up a little bit and teach them that you have to obtain patent protection wherever you want that protection, going from nation to nation. And we assist them in figuring out, talking with their business people, figuring out what their business strategy is. Where do they want to obtain protection? It's impossible to obtain protection everywhere in the world. It doesn't make sense to do that. You need to look, where's your business, where's your competitors, where do you think you're going to be expanding?
Well, we have a huge following for the Emerald Planet in Europe. So do you file with the European Union, the Commission itself, or do you have to go nation by nation? So how would you coach people that are looking at Europe in order to establish their market or to share their green technology?
The answer is you do both. Not to give you an attorney answer, but first you would apply for a patent in the European Patent Office, and then once you get approval from there, then you validate your patent in other countries. Then you go and you will validate in Germany, for example.
And what you're doing then, Mark, is that you're going to the countries where you feel like it's going to be your major market, do it there, and then if you, let's say that you've done most of Northern Europe and now you want to expand, say, into some of the CIS countries, like a Czech Republic, Hungary, some of these countries, then you go ahead and you start rolling it out to there.
Well, you're going to have to make the decision, early on, because you have a window of opportunity to do those validations.
How much time do you need from when you first introduce your idea, your trademark, and everything within, say, the European Union, in order to be sure that you have all the filings and protections that you need?
I mean, you will know, within a year, pretty much, where you want to go. I mean, you have one filing, and then that allows you plenty of time to go through the examination, find out if there are a lot of what's called prior art out there, documents showing that other people may have done something similar. That allows you to get a good value of what your invention is. Plus, it allows you to market your technology itself to potential customers. And then you figure out, okay, where do I want to go from here? Is it worth it? This may be groundbreaking technology that you truly want to obtain protection everywhere in the world.
Well, the whole thing about it, many people don't think of Africa as a continent, as a place where they want to do business, but Africa consistently over the last decade has continued to grow at a good clip, 4.5% to 6-7%, depending on the country. How do you deal in a continent like Africa, 54 nations, extreme differences from a South Africa to a South Sudan, if you will, and everything in between? How do you deal with something where it's really continent-wide?
Well, with similar to Europe, they have regional patent applications, so you can file a regional application down there, again, just like Europe, get a general grant, and then you can figure out what other countries you want to go into.
So looking at the BRICS, the Brazils, Russia, India, China, and we're adding to that, South Africa probably would be the BRICS to this whole thing. But Brazil really is a leader in the Western Hemisphere as far as green technologies.
Yes.
They're advancing at a very rapid rate. So how do you, as the developed world, how do they deal with a country like Brazil, which is really galloping as far as its own legal processes and becoming very sophisticated in how they're doing business?
Yeah, it's a great opportunity, and that's why it's attracted so much of attention. Huge economy. The middle class continues to grow there. Recently that discovery of that huge oil field, so there's tremendous wealth that's going to be there. But that country has been very active in green technology and continues to work that way through the Amazon rainforest, through the production of ethanol from sugarcane.
Well, flex fuel automobiles. I mean, it's just incredible the technologies.
Exactly. And Western countries are looking to partner up down there. And they are looking at Brazilian companies to work with companies. Brazil is a country that is difficult to work in if you don't know how to navigate around. I mean, there's a federal government, but then there's a local government, and there may even be another government below local. So you need to know how to navigate, and many, many different laws. You really need to partner with at least one company down there that knows how to navigate it.
Mark, we're running out of time, so this needs to be quick, but it's a very profound question, is that what do you advise your clients they need to do before they start working with a Brazilian company as far as all their intellectual properties, the copyrights, the trademarks, and the patents?
Well, again, it's always best practice to make certain that you've locked down your own intellectual property as much as you can, because once you start getting into a negotiation with somebody else, then ownership could potentially get blurred. You also want to look at whatever intellectual property your potential partner may have to see if they're a good fit. I think doing research early on allows you to be much more efficient with your time and your efforts to see really, can I weed out people, because I want the partnership to be a win-win situation.
So this is the proverbial definitely look, research, put your toe in before you ever leap anywhere.
Oh, definitely.
You can be anywhere on the planet with all the technology. What is your advice for any company, whether they plan to stay just in the United States or they're already thinking globally?
Yeah. Well, your technology may have tremendous value, even if you don't have, for example, a footprint or a brick and mortar establishment in Brazil. There is licensing of that technology, which is incredibly valuable. And small companies can generate a tremendous revenue stream by having a great idea and marketing it to the proper people.
Well, this is the whole thing, Mark, as you know, is that the real value could be the intellectual property they have more than the product and what have you. So thank you for being with us. This is Mark Sweet, Esquire, partner, Finnegan LLP, Washington, D.C. And thank you for being with us as we explore the green law aspects of technology as we create the Emerald Planet.
There's more than just books at the library.
There's more than just books at the library.
Excuse me.
There's more than just books at the library.
Il y a plus que de livres à la bibliothèque.
A lot of great books here today. You know, there's more than just books at the library.
I know.
There's more than just books at the library.
I don't want to be hooked to a machine.
I want all the medical treatment available to me.
I wouldn't want my family to have to make this decision.
My doctor knows what's best for me.
An advance directive is your life on your terms. Talk with your family. Decide what's right for you. Then put it in writing.
Documenting my wishes today means my family won't have to make heart-wrenching decisions later.
To learn more, visit www.putitinwriting.org.
1,200 American youth run away from their homes every day. The National Runaway Switchboard is here to help. 1-800-RUNAWAY. If you are a runaway, thinking about running away from home, or a parent or guardian concerned about issues facing your child, call us 24 hours a day. 1-800-RUNAWAY. In times of crisis, hope is just a phone call away. 1-800.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States, looking around the globe for those 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the services, and the products that are making a difference as we move towards 2050. One of our themes is paving the way to 2050 as we continue to increase the population on the planet by 2 billion souls. The climate continues to change, sea level rise, many challenges are going on. And at the same time, there's an absolute almost gallop, if you will, towards creating new technology, services, and products. All of this needs to be protected, the intellectual property, which really is as, and sometimes even more valuable than the actual product or services itself. And we have someone here who is an absolute expert at that and also specializing in small to medium scale enterprises that are looking at this notion of how to protect their intellectual property. Antigone G. Payton is an attorney, founder, CEO of this name I just love, Cloudy Law.
Thank you.
That's a great name. And you told us once you were on before, but explain again, Cloudy, what that really means, and then how does this really relate to this whole notion of working in the cloud?
So Cloudy is a made-up name, and really the idea is law firm 2.0, how we use technology to service our clients better, to communicate better. So we wanted a name that really encapsulated that idea. So we use cloud technology to collaborate with our clients. We give them a client portal, and we have clients all over the world, so it allows us to provide information to them 24/7. So when we're sleeping and they're awake and looking at whatever information we've provided, they have it available through cloud computing technology.
Well, looking at cloud computing, this is something since you know, the advent of emails, really we've been working in the cloud. So how does the cloud computing really relate to law, but what does that really mean for companies that say, we want to do business around the globe, we're a small company, we're located in a medium-sized or city or small town, how do we really reach out to people around the globe so that we can actually expand our market? How do you use the cloud to do that?
Well, it's interesting because as you point out, cloud technology has been around for a long time. In the mid-90s, it became accessible to the everyday user through some technological innovations and some companies like Netscape who really brought it to the common man. But it's really an economic model. In a sense, the idea is that we're using centralized computing that might be distanced from a company in order to compute faster, to have the ability to have elastic computing. So the idea is if a company all of a sudden is getting a lot of computing needs, they don't have to have 40 servers sitting on site. They can be using the Amazon cloud or another cloud computing provider to scale up and scale down as they need. And then they're really paying for the computing services that they need as they need it.
Well, it's really like leasing a car or leasing heavy equipment if you have a manufacturing facility, or even leasing people as far as outsourcing. You're really doing the same thing in computing, is that you're actually going out and paying or leasing those services that you need. How has the law really caught up to this type of computing so that someone like yourself in Washington, D.C. really can be servicing clients in, you know, all the continents and maybe multiple countries?
Well, it's allowed us to do a number of things we couldn't do before. One, law has become more sophisticated, and our abilities to advise our clients have become better now that there's more data that we can access in real time, or data around the world that we really never had access to without sending a local company to a particular patent office or to a site to investigate things further. Now we really have a much broader and more sophisticated reach in what we can do when we advise clients and the type of information we can take in when we're giving them sophisticated advice, particularly for biotech or green technology companies that might have manufacturing facilities in 5 different countries, and they really want to sell their products in the major European markets and in the American market as well. There's a lot of information you want to take in order to provide them advice relating to their IP strategies.
Well, looking at this whole thing as far as intellectual property, I mean, this has real value, and many people just underestimate the actual value of their intellectual property. And so looking at it, what do they really need to understand before they start going abroad? We know that, you know, kind of everybody looks, well, we're going to outsource and produce this much cheaply abroad. And yet they're opening up a whole access to their technology for which they may not be willing to give it up or may not have adequate protection. So how can they work with a firm like yours in order to decide exactly when to make that leap? Or do we need to manufacture closer to home, keep our arms around our technology, and only export?
That's a great question. There's many different types of laws and practices around the world. And as you mentioned before, IP has a geographic limitation. So the laws relating to copyrights in the United States might be different than other countries. Some countries don't protect software. Some have moral rights and the United States don't. So before they even go into a country and start setting up their manufacturing facilities, they need to have a local expert, really. Somebody who understands not only the laws there, but also the practices. Because there are a number of countries where we have what seem to be very impressive IP laws, but no real enforcement mechanism from either a legal point of view when it comes to the courts or agencies, or really from a practice point of view, where it's similar to our own enforcement policies in the United States, which might change depending on the president who's in office. So they need a local expert to help them understand how all of that's going to happen, and perhaps if there aren't significant IP protections through contracts and through physical protection procedures, they might do something that's similar to what they might get under a similar IP regime in another country.
Well, looking at it too, it's not only just the manufacturing aspects of this, but actually selling into a third country, or maybe they're have the invent within the United States, in North America, then they go and they're producing in Asia and somewhere, then their market really happens to be in Africa and maybe back into South America. So how do you follow that whole trail to make sure that you're protected not only just in the manufacturing, but also in the export, and to reduce the amount of fake goods that are produced off of the investment that you've made?
It's really important to have a team of people who work together early and often. And the idea is you need to talk to the business people, you need to talk to the export people, you need to have an understanding of short-term and long-term business strategy. So companies like ours can be looking ahead for our clients and saying, oh, 5 years from now you think you're going to be in this country, let's start looking at what you need to do now before you even start to move your goods into that country. We're also looking at what countries their goods might go into that they didn't intend to put the goods into. So there's always this line of making sure that you're focused on the here and now, but you're looking at the long term. And as Mark mentioned, sometimes there's a window of opportunity in order to protect yourself for things you might do years out.
Well, there's some countries where you can go in, you're actually you're establishing relationships, you're negotiating and all that, and then they find, my goodness, I just started manufacturing there. Already I see my goods back in my own home territory. So how do you make sure that that doesn't happen, or is there any way to make sure that's not going to happen?
Well, publicizing that you have IP protection is an important first step. So
let's back up on that. Okay, and this is something you've mentioned to me before, and I like this attitude. What you're doing, in a sense, is not only are you using the IP, the intellectual property, and the courts and all that, you're using the media, in a sense, as your partner in order to protect yourself.
Right. So more sophisticated companies are often publishing on blogs, for instance. The fact that they've received a number of patents and they've filed patent applications in other countries in order to protect that same technology. People around the world can have access to that. So, if you're moving into India and you tell people that you're also pursuing protection in India, that's a signal to others who might want to take your intellectual property that you intend to protect it and perhaps enforce it if the need arises. So it's really signaling that you're sophisticated when it comes to IP, and you better not mess with us because we mean it and we're spending money on protecting it.
Now looking at, and this goes to this Cloudigy, because I know you're reaching out to attorneys across the globe that are in IP. So let's say like in the BRICS, the Brazil, the China, the India, Russia, other countries that are really getting into this game and developing their own technologies at a pace that never been in the past. How do you advise your clients to deal with attorneys there, or do they would go through a firm like yours to be an interface for that, so they do it directly, interface? How do they make that decision?
It depends on the size of the client. Some clients already have their own existing relationships in those other countries, but usually they're coming to us and we have an understanding of the countries we should be looking at, and then we have a number of partners abroad, whether it's trademarks, copyrights, or patents that are really our go-to partners to have those discussions, because they're barred in those countries, they have the ability to practice law in those countries, and they, again, are part of our team. We bring them in as part of our team to have some multinational strategic discussions with the client about what makes sense for them.
Looking at the, and part of our title for this, this program is Litigation Avoidance.
Right.
What is litigation avoidance, and how do you bring it back besides the media bringing in a good size or well-respected law firm within the country that you're targeting? What other couple of steps, inexpensive, that somebody can just intuitively say, oh, I can do that?
Sure. Well, there's also, you mentioned big data before. There are a number of ways in which companies on their own can start looking at the technology that's available and really getting an understanding of who's patented particular technology in different countries, who the major players in the markets are. And it's anywhere from doing a Google search, or another search engine search, looking at Google patents in the United States, for instance. The World Intellectual Property Organization has a free database that you can search in English, German, and French. And they actually have experts on staff. If you want to do search in various Asian countries, you can hire one of those experts to help you do those basic searches. And these are just some of the steps people can take as they're thinking about the patent portfolio and looking at the potential issues.
What's the next step for Cloudigy? It's got to be quick.
The next step for Cloudigy is we're using big data and cloud computing to service our clients better.
That's absolutely fantastic. Antigone G. Payton, who is an attorney, founder, CEO of Cloudigy Law in Washington, D.C. Alexander, actually, thank you for being with us. And thank you, dear viewer, for being with us as we look around the globe to create Emerald Planet.
Osama bin Laden calls getting nuclear weapons a religious duty.
Today, materials that can be used to make nuclear weapons are stored in more than 40 countries.
Sometimes protected by just a chain link fence.
Yet not enough is being done to lock down these materials
before terrorists steal them.
Why did we learn all this?
My mother,
my son,
my sister-in-law
were all murdered September 11th.
Help protect America.
Together we can.
Please join us.
The stem cell issue is being debated throughout the country. Truth is, most everyone has an opinion, even if they don't know the facts.
Let's stop arguing and start really understanding the potential of stem cell research.
For us and for millions of Americans living with disabilities, get the facts.
Call 1-877-842-3442 for free information from the Stem Cell Research Foundation. That's 1-877-842-3442.
Following the tragic events of September 11th, there have been hundreds of violent attacks against innocent Americans.
Remember what that flag you're waving stands for.
Remember, please stop the hate.
We're stronger when we are united.
Remember what that flag you're waving stands for.
One nation under God.
Indivisible.
With liberty
and justice
for all.
In America, there's either room for everyone, or it's not America.
Don't pick the wrong fight.
Let's keep America land of the free.
Stop the hate.
Planning a home renovation? Put this at the top of your to-do list.
because after 10 years, none of you are protected against tetanus and another potentially fatal disease, diphtheria. A minor injury, such as a cut or a scrape, can put you at risk for a tetanus infection. And while safety gear offers some protection, an up-to-date vaccination called the TD booster is the best insurance against tetanus. So get the TD booster. If it's been 10, do it again.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome again to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States. I'm Dr. Sam Hancock, the President, Executive Director of Emerald Planet and Director and host for the Emerald Planet TV. And we're looking around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for the 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the services, and the products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And as we go towards 2050, what kinds of individuals, processes are going to be used to increase the quality of life as the planet goes toward 9 billion souls? And that's not something that's going to be done easily. We need to actually have the best minds working on this. And a gentleman sitting right beside me is working at and thinking about this on a day-to-day basis. This is Mark D. Sweet, who is the attorney and partner at Finnegan LLP in Washington, D.C. And Mark, thank you for being back with us.
Thanks for having me.
Talking about Finnegan, we're going to just quickly, because you've been with us before, but again, what is Finnegan? Where are you located in North America and abroad?
Yep. Well, our main office is in Washington, D.C. Finnegan is the largest IP-only law firm, intellectual property law firm in the United States. All we do is intellectual property patents, trademarks, copyrights, from getting an application to enforcing the application, litigating the application, as well as doing transactional work such as licensing.
Well, I know it's very important for no matter what scale business, small to large scale, for them to really take advantage of the legal services that are available and to be sure that they adequately protect themselves. So we're really going to focus this conversation on Asia. What are let's start with the opportunities and then the challenges it faces as far as being able to protect your technology, service, or product as you want to move into the Asian markets?
Yeah, great question. It's a huge opportunity, as you well know. I mean, there is so much technology that is out there. There's so many people that need the services of the technology, and it's a great opportunity for companies from the United States to go in there and do work.
Now, one of the things about this market, many people think that as long as they do their filings and they take care of their copyrights and trademarks and patents within the United States itself, or within NAFTA, which is Mexico, Canada, the United States, they feel like they're well protected. And I think you're here to say that that's not exactly the case.
It's not true at all. It's not true at all. You need to file your application in the country that you want to seek protection. So, for example, if you're looking to protect your invention in the United States, in Europe, in China, you're going to need to file your application in all of those areas to obtain protection. A patent is only good and provides rights in the geographic area that it's filed in.
Now, looking at the notion of China, you have, of course, this lingering disagreement, I think we'll use that to downplay this, between China and Taiwan, of course.
Yes.
Also, you have Hong Kong with a very special, unique relationship. So let's say that you want to do business in these three areas, Hong Kong, China, Taiwan. What kind of filings do you need to do, and what uniquenesses do you need to be aware of amongst those three?
Yeah, well, I think China and Taiwan, I would treat those as completely separate. I mean, you need to do filings in both of those countries if, in fact, you're doing business in both of those countries, or your competitors are. With Hong Kong, you can sometimes validate, nationalize a Chinese application. So there are ways you can do it that way. But China, Taiwan, I treat those things, completely separate.
Now, looking at Hong Kong, though, I mean, it really is unique how they deal with things. You got English common law in Hong Kong still, even though it's back to the mothership, China itself. So what peculiarities do you need to be aware of there? And then let's move into the five tigers, if you will, you know, the Vietnams, the Cambodias, the Thai, you know, Singapores of the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a minefield trying to navigate it. That's why whenever you're thinking, if you have technology or a small company thinking about bringing your ideas over to Hong Kong, it is imperative that you are partnering up with either a law firm or a company over there that knows how to navigate the different rules. I mean, it's completely foreign. It's a completely foreign language that you really need to have a specialist in.
Yeah, and looking at then, of course, you got what they affectionately refer to as the five tigers. You got the Vietnams and the Thailands, the Singapores, and other countries. But then you have ASEAN down here with Australia, New Zealand. You got Oceania. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, it's a whole universe just in this one segment of the planet.
Yep. And those are great countries to mention, because thinking of green technology, what technologies may be good to use in Australia, for example, may not be technologies that you want to pursue in Hong Kong. You know, solar energy, for example, would be huge in Australia. Is very big in Hong Kong, but may not be as big as it is just because of the geographic location.
And then also the lack of space, and how you use the rooftops of all those high-rise buildings in Hong Kong.
The windows too.
Oh yes, absolutely. But looking at these different areas, how do you really coach your clients? And I think that's really I like your attitude of coaching your clients to make sure they really are protecting themselves in these many different countries. And how do you advise them? You know, there's a limited amount of resources to move in. They're going to experiment, but at the same time, you don't want somebody coming into Australia and all of a sudden they say, we really like these windows, or we like the solar technology, and all of a sudden it ends up in Vietnam being produced there.
Exactly, and your point about, you know, limited resources, money, if we're talking here, limited time too. So when I look at something, I look at it a pure IP vacuum, where in my perfect world, we're protecting this very important technology everywhere. But I know that that can't happen. So we need to meet with the business people, meet with the principals in the company to make certain we understand the business goals so we can do it, and then protect the IP where we think we want to bring it. And it's an educated guess. And it may be a situation where, you know, I don't think we're going to pursue this in Vietnam, and we lose out on that market because we don't protect. But it's been a calculated risk, and that's what we try to do, is advise and make certain that the decisions that are made are really learned decisions.
And that really goes back to the company, though. It's not something you can, as a law firm, you can make a decision for the client. The essence is they have to make their own decisions.
I am a counselor. I counsel. Oftentimes, my counsel is not adopted, but that's my job, is to give as many options as possible.
And that's called document, right?
That's it.
Even when you're a law firm, you want to do lots of documentation. Going to the China, you know, the focus is on there. Of course, there's a lot of focus on other nations in Asia. But, you know, China really does seem to be trying to catch up with the world, if you will, as far as intellectual property development, because as it becomes more of a player on the world stage, one of the things, if you know, you pay to play, and you need to be able to enforce the laws, rules, and regulations that you have on the books if you're going to play, you know, in the big playground with all the other nations.
Yes, very true. You know, a decade or two ago, you would have thought that China was the wild, wild west. You know, the laws were, you know, a little flexible. We'll put it that way, hard to enforce. Now, I mean, it's the growth that has gone on in China has spurred on the protection. The Chinese companies are coming up with great ideas, and they're pushing the government to enforce those ideas. And they want a more vibrant patent system. And you've seen a huge increase in the number of filings in China because of that. They are taking their IP seriously. They are litigating and their IP seriously, and really putting a lot of pressure on the ideas when they go through the Chinese patent office. So when they come out the other side, it's a very strong patent.
Well, the whole thing about this is if you involve the local companies in this, make sure that they feel like there's real value as far as the IP is concerned, they can put a whole lot more pressure on the governmental authorities to make sure they're applying the laws, but applying it equally across all the different nations, all the different companies that are moving into China itself.
That's exactly right. Again, these companies have great ideas. They want to protect those ideas, and they're looking for the Chinese government for the backing. You know, we want these patents, these Chinese patents, to be very valuable. And that's going to spur innovation. It's going to spur investment from other people and partnerships.
Yeah, and I think this is something too, Mark, that I know over the years you've been involved in this, the tremendous change in China and Russia, South Africa, Brazil, India, and all these places where all of them are realizing we really are playing on a global stage, and no longer do we have these peculiar, nice ways of doing things within our own borders, but this really is an international market, and we have to play by the global rules.
Oh, definitely. I mean, the way information is shared nowadays, I mean, literally, I tell you something, and it's being broadcast around the world instantly. And that's how people are losing and taking advantage of some of other people's IP, because that technology gets out there, it's not properly protected, and then people can use it.
Well, we're looking at one of the areas that really we don't talk too much about, but becoming more and more to the fore, is the 54 nations of Africa.
Yes.
And of course, China is playing there. All the world major powers are playing there. When I say playing, very serious at developing the technologies. But for the first time, African universities, research institutes, think tanks are organically growing out of the soil of Africa. And all of a sudden, they're looking around the globe and saying, well, I don't know why everybody's looking to compete here. We want to compete out. So how do you have this interaction between, say, China, the U.S., and several selected countries, say like a South Africa or even a Uganda, and so that everybody's working on parity?
Yeah, I guess one of the ways that the parity is used is through licensing and getting that that IP out there and sharing it and making it beneficial for everybody, because like your example for Uganda, I mean, the boots on the ground there are going to have certain problems that are specific to that area that need to be dealt with, for example, water purification maybe. But they're going to want to outsource and talk to other people who may have dealt with this situation. There may be a membrane manufacturer in China which uses nanotechnology that's perfect for filtering the water down there. So that way, instead of developing their own technology, they can license it.
Well, thank you for being with us. We're going to go through all the credits as it rolls on, Mark. But you've really done an absolutely fantastic job, and thank you for being with us. And you can be very proud of your law firm, Finnegan, and what you're doing. And I didn't realize that you guys were actually the largest IP firm in the United States. That's absolutely incredible, which means you're probably one of the largest in the world, too. So
pretty big.
That's fantastic. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you here.